Okay, so always same people, and welcome back to your favorite YouTube channel. So today, guys, like always, another weekly analysis for you. On the screen are the pairs we'll be analyzing today, but make sure you do stay to the end of the video as there is a bonus pair there waiting for you. We'll quickly go through my trade for the week first, take a look at the dollar, the DXY, and then progress into the analysis. There is timestamps below where you can potentially pick a pair you're looking to see. If you want to skip ahead, you can do that using the timestamps. But I did have one trade this week on Aussie CHF, which is in a bit of profit. So I've seen some nice upside there, but we are a little bit corrective. So I have trailed my stop loss just below, this low here, since we do have some bullish structure which price is creating. So I've reduced the risk of the position because essentially I've called a bottom here because I'm looking for this corrective move to end and a new bullish wave to continue, which is still my expectation. But now that we have seen some bullish structure in my favor and we are also seeing price fail to break through resistance here, I have reduced the risk on the position. If you were to come back down again, back into these lows, I'd rather just take the reduced loss than potentially look for a re-entry to get back into the trade. This might turn into a wider consolidation and potentially we later continue. So I wouldn't mind re-entering at a later date when things are a bit more matured potentially. So I have reduced the risk on the position. We have seen some upside. I did say that I'm not going to go break even until I do see price completely break through the high here, because then I don't want to go break even too early because there's a good chance I could get tapped out before price does see the move. Whereas this does give me some security whilst also reducing my risk. So I have trailed the stop just before we closed out for the week, but the plan is to see a lot more upside. We're coming from the all-time lows. I'm expecting basically push, pull back, push. There's a massive zone just above us, big consolidation, which spewed out all of that bearish momentum. I'm looking for us to go and retest those areas. So there is a lot of upside on the table for Aussie CHF, and I'm trying to see if I can take a decent chunk out of that. And at the moment, we're a little bit corrective. I would like to see a bit more momentum, which is why I've managed the position. But yeah, hopefully we can pick up next week, and of course I'll keep you guys updated. Actually, let's go to the DXY, then we'll take a look at Euro. In terms of dollar, still bearish on this one, but we are really struggling at support right now. I can see prices tapped into this area 3 times, once, twice, and a third time, followed by a very aggressive wick there to the downside. So it looks like support at 98.750 is holding and doing a pretty good job. So I do think there's more upside to be had for USD. I'm still bearish though. This is the main high. This is the main swing point that keeps me bearish. As long as price doesn't break through that high, I will remain bearish. So if we were to push to the upside, break through resistance to our left there, but respect this zone and come back down, I've marked out this level of resistance, this kind of area of supply where we could tap into before continuing and just basically put another lower high in and continue, this bearish structure here. But more importantly, continue that overall bearish structure which has been in place since the start of the year. So just because we are rejecting support here doesn't mean, okay, we're going to have a massive reversal here. Of course it could be, we're not to know until it actually happens. But I'm still going to stay with the bears just because we're respecting support here. I would anticipate some more upside for dollar, maybe the first half of the week. And then we see what we do around 100, 100.5. That will be the make or break. And of course, if price does break structure to the upside, well, as I said, if we do take up the high, I'll switch my bias to bullish, look for a pullback, perhaps the retest of the same area, and targets back around 102, and that could be a nice trade, perhaps some shorts on Euro or something like that. So this area here will be the make or break. For now, I remain bearish because of course we're still below, but that's the area I'm going to keep my eyes on for next week to determine my bias for the dollar. Same thing for Euro, same situation in terms of this is the major low, which gave us this new high. So again, price does need to break through all of this confluence for me to switch my bias around. For now, I'm still bullish for Euro, still expecting a push back to the high. But again, we are rejecting the highs pretty aggressively. Big wick there on Thursday. I do think we can go for a bit of a sell-off, potentially come back and retest the trend line, come back and test this kind of area of demand. And again, similar to the dollar, there's a pretty meaningful level of support running through the market here, just above 1.125. So I'm looking to see if the dollar, if Euro dollar could push back into this area, perhaps see some nice rejection. I think that could be a great place to pick up some longs to potentially take it back into the highs up at 1.156. or at least, of course, the highs there. We'll see how the trade does pan out. But for now, I think that's a fantastic area to keep a close eye on. Stops below the low. And if you were to break to the downside, well, price is probably going to push to these lows anyway. So we'll look to switch the bias. But for now, I do remain bullish, looking for buys around 1.128, we'll call it. And hopefully some buys back into the highs for next week. Okay, so over to dollar yen. So dollar yen, we had another test of this level this week and it reacted pretty well. I was looking to see if price will break through, but no, we got a nice wick into the zone, nice rejection. And then price came back again midweek and rejected it very, very well. So dollar yen still within this range here. Again, my area of interest really are those two levels. And if we can break through them, I'll be looking for a swing back to the high there. And if you can break through the low, looking at a swing back to 140. I'm not really looking to trade within this area. I think the breakout will give us a bit more momentum. So those are the opportunities which I will focus on personally. But if we do come back into resistance and price respects it again, that of course could be a nice place for a short as well. But I'll be waiting for the breakouts and some retests to follow those moves afterwards. But for now, dollar yen still pretty flat because we're just kind of stuck between resistance and support. We could still stay in there throughout the whole of next week as well. It just depends if we can eventually see that breakout. But 145.750, 142.5, I'll call it 500. Keep an eye on those levels. They can be great places to buy and sell from. And then we've got some nice targets as well if you do catch the breakout. So that'll be the plan next week for dollar yen. Okay, so over to dollar CAD. So dollar CAD, I'm getting ready for some buys now. Mainly just for retracement. I'm not necessarily looking for a complete reversal, but I've been talking about this zone on the daily chart for a while. Nice miniature consolidation there. And of course, we absolutely ripped to the upside with a lot of momentum. So I do think we are likely to bounce from this area, especially since the market has been falling for a while. We're a bit stretched to the downside. It does look like we're kind of running out of steam a little bit, kind of in this wedge pattern here. So an indication that momentum's starting to dry up for the bears. We're becoming a bit more corrective. So I do think it's a matter of time before we do see a bit of a relief. Now, again, I'm not necessarily fancying a complete reversal. Price might come back, tap into a lower high, create another one, and then we might be on our way. Of course, we might not even bounce from this area too. It depends how we continue into next week and whether you can get some healthy confirmations or not. But coming into this area, judging momentum, I'm not really interested in looking to sell dollar CAD anymore. We've already seen a lot of momentum. Now I'm more focused on the shift, trying to catch the buy. So if I can see somewhat of a double bottom here, maybe another piercing wick through the zone, a strong rejection afterwards, that would be enough to get me into a position. Bit more of an aggressive trade because we're buying at the lows, but it's in a healthy area and not looking for anything crazy. If we can get pushed back into this area, I think that's a great place to at least lock in some gains. I'll be looking to try and push the trade further, perhaps this area here as well, but I will look to manage the risk. You know, if I see things are looking a little bit shaky here, I'll remove risk or take some partials off, especially when I'm going counter trend. But there is a bit of mileage on this one. You can see how aggressively we react last time. We might see something similar as well, so keep an eye out for that. But confirmation not quite there yet. It's a good zone to keep an eye on, 1.365. Waiting for us to get that kind of second rejection to really confirm things, maybe some more wicks as well, and then hopefully a push back into 1.38 and potentially 1.395 if we do see that momentum. But that's the plan next week for dollar CAD. Okay, so over to euro pound. So euro pound, bit of a sideways move this week. I still like the buys down at this level, looking for somewhat of a double bottom. So you can get one more drive to the downside, reject it well, and then hopefully look for some buys there. If I expand to the daily chart, you can see the type of area we're trading in. Lovely consolidation there, huge break to the upside. You know, this is the area of demand potentially could send us back up again. You know, there's still some bullish structure at play here. Potentially we do put a higher low in to try and push higher. Now I'm not looking for anything crazy for euro pound. I know it's a very choppy pair, and the best way to kind of tackle this type of pair is just kind of buy low, sell high, not necessarily trying to take advantage of trends because the market doesn't really trend as a whole. You can see for the past decade, more or less, we've been flat. So it's not about taking huge moves here for euro pound, just more kind of buying in the right places and selling in the right places. Of course, we are stuck in some resistance just above us, which has held price for the past few days. So I do think we can have a bit of a drop there. There might be some sell opportunities to start the week off. I'm more fixated on the buys based on the higher time frames. So I would just be focused on trying to pick up some longs around 0.8366, but there could be some sells to keep an eye on as well. Depends kind of on the time frames you're working on. But if you're looking for a bit of a swing trade, there are buy opportunities here. Of course, it does depend how price gets then, how we react. I'm not saying buy there blindly, but I think that's a smart place to be looking for some entries. And hopefully we can trade it back to the same resistance, and maybe we can hold it a bit further as well at some levels around here, which I do think price can go and tick off as well. But we can probably speak a bit more about that next week. But for now, that's the area of interest where I'm looking for entries. Let's see if we can get some confirmations in that level for next week. Okay, so over to Aussie dollar. So just very, very choppy price action. I think there can be some trade opportunities for the shorts actually. A bit more aggressive, but looking to try and catch some shorts at the high, or even if we spike into the up end of the channel. I think that's a clever place for a short, especially with the way price is moving. I also do fancy the buys as well. Very, very consistent with all these higher lows. If price was to push back down to the low of the channel and reject it well, that's a key insight there, reject it well. I do think that'll be a smart place to try and pick up some longs. Now, because price is so corrective, I do think we'll eventually break out the channel to the downside. So I do think there is some weakness for Aussie dollar coming soon. So it does depend how we react here, whether we do bounce again or we just break through. So keep that in mind. But in the meantime, if we can push back into resistance again and see a healthy rejection, I still think it's a healthy place for a short. The market's been struggling quite a lot, trying to push higher. A lot of wicks on the daily chart. If I expand to the daily, big wick there, another one there, and again another one there. So the market's clearly finding it very, very hard to break higher. And typically when we're seeing corrective price action like this, most of the time price does eventually break lower. So that's kind of where the bias comes from as well. So if you're looking for shorts, I would recommend wait for another push back into resistance so you can get your stop loss above the high. Keep an eye on that area. If you're looking for longs, the channel has acted as support on numerous occasions. So potentially it could happen again. Just need to see how we react there. And there could be some nice kind of intra-week, intraday trades, just catching the highs, catching the lows, whilst we kind of consolidate. I'm still waiting for the bigger breakout and some buys after, but that's probably at least another week or two away. So I'm not going to talk too much about that. Now is a bit more for these kind of small opportunities, just trading the width of this kind of corrective channel. So yeah, that's the plan going to next week for Aussie dollar. Okay, so over to New Zealand CAD. So a very, very choppy pair. Not a lot to do with this one until we do push to the lows, because that's where I want to find entries. As long as price stays within the middle of the range, that's the no-go area for me, and that's just a easy way to give back profits to the market. So I do want to see price push back to the lows, back to the extremes, and then see what we do here. Do we provide wicks? Do we reject well? Well, if I do see that, are we looking for confirmations to get long? Slots below the low. And hopefully I can take advantage of a swing back at least to the up end of the range. But I would expect to see some new highs past this point as well. So I'll try and maximize the profits there, hold on for a bigger move. Of course, see what we do along the way. But I would understand that there will be a lot of noise here. So I have to be a little bit flexible, because price is probably going to give me some awkward wicks and some rejection. But as long as I can get an entry down at the lows here and stops below there, it means that even if I was to trail to break even, I'm probably still away from all the noise and all the chaos. So it probably allows me to look for the bigger trade. But yeah, I'm looking for a push to the lows here. I'm still looking for this massive V-shaped pattern to give us that continuation. Although the longer it does go on for, the less likely we probably do see that move. Typically with V-shaped patterns, the correction isn't typically too long. But I still like the buys, essentially just trading the low of the range really. But I do have a bullish bias long term for New Zealand CAD, so if I can get some entries in this area, stops below the low, that would be fantastic. And like I said, at least to the up end of the range, but I do think we can get to some new highs past that daily swing. So keep an eye on this opportunity. Hopefully we do get a drive lower this week. We'll have to wait and see. Been waiting a minute, but hopefully we can get some entries and some buys next week. Okay, so over to pound NZD. So I'm still looking at this big head and shoulder pattern playing out. which is left shoulder there, head, and right shoulder, and I'm looking for a move lower. So I'm pretty bearish bias on pound NZD. I was unfortunate to get any entries here. It did occur whilst I was sleeping, so yeah, only so much I can do about that, but I do still expect us to push lower. However, I do think I might still be able to get a trade because we are looking pretty corrective here, and technically we're kind of trading in the middle of a range here, so I'm not too motivated to be looking to try and find some entries where I can possibly get in and ride it lower. What I'm looking to see is if we can have one more drive to the upside, back into resistance again, look for some entries similar to what we had over there, and hopefully look to ride it down from there, and of course manage the trade along the way. But of course, if price does respect this area, which so far is doing pretty well, you know, price support there, now turn resistance, we may just kind of top out at this level and continue lower. Like I said, it's in the middle of the range. It's not kind of in an area which I want to find entries, put stop losses. It's just not in an optimal area for me. Up at the highs here, not that I'll be immune to getting faked out or wicked out or taking a loss, but it's much more of an effective place for an entry, and it does wonders for the risk to reward and just maximizing my profit on the trade and how far I can hold it. An entry up there versus an entry there means I can probably stomach some bigger pullbacks too. So there's a lot more pros waiting for the bigger move, especially if you're a bit more of a swing trader looking for bigger moves in the market than looking for opportunities here. But I still like the level. I think if you're looking for an intraday position, might get at least a reaction off that area. Don't have to be looking for the big swing, of course. I think that's still a sensible place for a short. It's just I wouldn't be looking for the big move because we're still kind of within the middle of that range. But bearish for now for pound NZD. Still looking for a push into the lows of 2.218. And yeah, that's the plan going into next week. Okay, so over to CAD Yen. So at the top of the range, which is great, but I want price to break through this level. There might be some nice shorts off the back of this. It's acted as resistance on a couple of occasions. Slight fake out there, but essentially we held that level. Likewise with support down here. But I haven't really been interested with CAD Yen as long as we're within the range. I'm always looking for breakouts, retests, riding momentum. When price is in the middle of a range, typically there's not a lot of momentum in the market. But if we can see a nice breakout this week, it looks like yen is looking pretty weak at the moment. Maybe that might continue into next week. Then I do think some opportunities on a retest could look really good. Riding that to the upside, there is a lot of room for us to push into. We've had a big sell-off. Perhaps we go and retrace a bit more of that move there. So I do still see more upside for CAD Yen if we see a solid break of the highs. Of course, keep an eye out, stay flexible, because if you do see some healthy rejection here, I mean, so far we've got a nice wick, no real momentum coming in, but if that was to say to continue and see a healthy rejection, I think that's still a nice place for a short. And there's the possibility you could ride it back into these lows and maybe these lows too as well. So still entertain the idea of shorts. The breakout is not guaranteed. If we reject it well, then yeah, I do like the idea of the shorts there too. But I would prefer the longs. That's why I think the bigger move will be. So if price does break out, great. Let's look for a retest and find some entries at this level. And again, for shorts, could be looking at a big swing into 101.5, but I'd also definitely consider this low here as well. And if we do break to the upside, the next big target I would say would be the high there at 108.274. So that's the plan for CAD Yen. Just keep an eye on what we do with this level. That will make or break the bias of being bullish or bearish. So that's an important area to keep a tab on, and hopefully find some entries next week for CAD Yen. Okay, so over to pound USD. So pound USD, things are looking a little bit more bearish now. We just had a very aggressive rejection at the high, and looks like prices breaking to the downside out of this channel. So to me, I do think we can see a bit of a drop for pound back into 1.342. I think that's a nice place for a buy. I was actually looking for buys at that level this week, but we didn't quite see the double bottom before we did see the push to the upside. It was a high low just above the area. So it just about missed on that opportunity. But if we were to come back down again, retest this level here, not only is it support previously, but it has been resistance on a couple of occasions and a pretty big one as well. So it's definitely an area to focus on. But yeah, pound USD has been bullish for a while. It's kind of topping out the highs here. Is this just a bigger consolidation for price to continue being bullish? Or is it potentially price putting on a high and we're going to reverse? Well, if it is the latter and we are going to reverse, then I would want to see price break through this. If we do get back underneath that level, then yeah, that would make me bearish, and I would be open to some shorts at this high, kind of like a head and shoulder, left head, right shoulder. I will be, open to the idea of selling on the retest there. So in terms of shorting pound USD, then that's really the opportunity I'm after, because at least at that point, I know there's a good chance that we've put a high in now, and I can capitalize on the pullback. But if we do stay above 1.34, then I would remain bullish as a whole for pound USD. And basically this would turn into somewhat of a range. So you can either wait for the breakout as well, which would be something like this, and then some opportunities on the top of that as well. I think that would be a smart idea as well. But for now, it does look like we probably will see a bit of a sell-off. So keep an eye on 1.34. That will be an important area for our buys too. But yeah, that will be the plan next week for pound USD. Okay, so over to pound CAD. So a bit of a retest this week, which is what we were discussing last week. Lovely break to the downside and lovely pullback. Half decent retest, haven't really got going, to be honest, but it was a successful retest in that range. And again, the idea stems from the higher time frames that the market's looking very tired. You can see how many wicks have we put into the high here. It looks like pound CAD is forming some type of top, or at least struggling at resistance. So I do think we can see a bit of a sell-off in the next few days, few weeks. And again, this week's candle as well, bit of a wick to the upside, failed to sustain price there. So I do think a drop is likely to happen for pound CAD, whether it will be a humongous reversal or just a bigger retracement. Of course, who knows? But there is room to the downside for us to push into. Support there, support there. So there is reward, worthy reward for your risk, a good risk to reward ratio essentially. If we can find some nice entries, especially if we can get another rally back into that high again, probably something like a double top. I think that could be a smart entry, potentially like an hourly chart, back into these lows, back into these lows as well. And again, we'll just kind of manage the trade, see how we get going. But in terms of an entry, same as last week, if we can push back into this area, since the move has been so corrective on the way down, it would be nice to see one more push up and then get the shorts off the back of that. And the next big level would be probably 0.835, and we'll see where we can go from there. But yeah, pound CAD still bearish, a lot of failure at the highs there. It looks like we're starting to put some lower highs in, so perhaps another retest of 1.86, get a nice stop loss placement as well, then some shorts eventually probably back into 1.805, but definitely keep an eye on 1.835 as well. Okay, so over to pound yen. So pound yen, we've got major resistance above us, and we've had a bit of a rally there. I was looking to see if pound yen could break to the downside through this low. We didn't quite get that this week. Another drive higher back into resistance. So this is where my focus will be now for pound yen. There is a major level resistance just above us at 199.200, we'll call it actually. Pretty big psychological level. If we do snap through that, then that's where I do think price is going to head towards. So if pound yen is going to remain bullish, we do need to break through this level. It's been pretty sturdy resistance on a couple of occasions, could be again. So if we are going to break through this, let's see some price action through that level. And of course, naturally, it should be acting as support as well. So keep an eye for the retest, and that's where we can probably find some entries to ride it higher. So from a bullish perspective, if pound yen is going to continue high, it does look like yen is still pretty weak as well. This is the opportunity which could look really good for next week. And on the other side of the coin, if price was to get here, fire some wicks, look bearish again, I think that's still a sensible place for a short. I would be a bit vigilant with that trade, because we are very consistent with these higher lows. So we are kind of squeezing to the upside here. So I wouldn't be necessarily banking on a pushback to support, because the odds are price probably pushes another higher low in somewhere. And doesn't quite get back to support before reversing. So you might want to be a bit flexible there. Maybe keep an eye on the trend line as a target. There's some resistance around here that could turn support. So 193.5, I would say, could be a nice area to lock in some gains. Maybe you go a lot further as well, but at least, paying yourself and being aware of where price could potentially turn around from. But yeah, make or break at that level, really. Strong break above, retest. I think that's a solid buy. And of course, likewise, if you reject it outright, I think that's a solid entry for a sell as well. So keep an eye on 196.4. But that's the plan next week for pound gem. Okay, so over to gold. So gold, we did see a breakout this week, but it did fail to get going. And things are looking a little bit awkward for gold. We haven't quite broke back inside the channel, so I'm not quite committing to the bearish bias just yet. And then we had that breakout consolidation, and now we're looking pretty bearish. But I would want to see price kind of really make its way back within the channel again before I do cement that bias of being bearish. And of course, this could just be a retest of the same channel too. Let's not forget that. Solid resistance a couple times, or 3 times actually. This could be acting as support. And if that's the case, we could see a bit of a rally. I still wouldn't be looking for entries there. I'm never really one to be looking for a break and retest of a trend line. I always like using trend lines just as outright support resistance. I don't really look for the retest. I always wait for support and resistance for entries. So for myself, I'll be waiting for price to break back above the highs here, because then that would reinstate that bullish bias and show that everything is looking bullish again, and the likelihood of a push back to 3,500 will look pretty high at that point. So a retest of this area would definitely interest me, and that was kind of my plan as the week progressed. We saw the break of the channel, then price started to create some resistance. I said if we can get a break of that, I'll look for the retest for the buys. We didn't get that, of course. We spilled to the downside, but this could be a retest for a continuation. So I'm definitely going to rule out the buys here. If we were to see a bit of a rally next week, great. Hopefully you can find a retest at 33.91. Like I said, if we were to bleed and stay within the channel, then I will look to switch that bias and a swing all the way back to 31.40 would be the plan. So again, coming into make or break area, not quite cemented the bias whether I'm bearish or bullish yet. If we do break above the highs, I'm definitely bullish. If we do break within the channel, I would definitely be bearish again. So that's really where I'm at with gold, just waiting for the market to make that move, staying kind of on my toes. And if there's a good opportunity, whichever direction really, I'm interested to trade it. So that's the plan next week for gold. Okay, so over to gold. So gold, nice rally this week. We did find support here, which was a very pivotal level of support. As I said, if you do break through that, I will probably change my bias for Bitcoin and be pretty bearish. But we talked about the retest of support here. Nice push down, nice retest of support there as well. Nice push back up after that rejection. And we've kind of formed this channel here. So this could just be a correction for price to continue higher, or it could potentially start a bearish trend. Let's not forget, we are trading at the prior all-time highs and not essentially doing the best of jobs in terms of breaking through it either. So we could form a large double top here and sell off as well. So we're at an area where there could be a lot of downside, but we've had a really sharp rejection off that low. I like the way price kind of played out because it was a very strong drop and momentum has completely erased that move pretty quickly afterwards. So it looks like buyers are still doing their job. And if that's the case, if we are going to rally, I think a nice strong break of that trend line and that resistance and support together does really show to us that the buyers are back in control of Bitcoin. And we're probably likely to push back to the highs at 111K. So Bitcoin buys above 107 look very, very nice, especially if that momentum kind of continues. I think it's a smart place for a buy. Equally, it's also a nice place for a short as well. You know, if price was to get here, start to fire some wicks and reject it well, I would probably expect to see another lower high form like we've been doing, and probably another push back into support. So definitely keep an eye on this area, 107K. I think it's a nice place for a short and a nice place for a long. I would still be bullish on Bitcoin. That's where momentum lies and that's where the trend is. So I would want to see price kind of break that resistance and then find another buy opportunity. But it really does depend on that level, because if you start to slow down, provide a lot of wicks, strong shift in momentum, then I would fancy a bit of a drop there. So it really depends how price reacts, but that's kind of the area I'll be focusing on. So yeah, that's the plan next week for BTC. Okay, so now on to the bonus pair, which for this week is silver. Very, very nice price action this week. Lovely breakout, brief pause, nice breakout as well. So there's a lot of momentum in the market right now, and we just cleared major resistance at 35. And I'm basically looking at the range here we've had over the past year or so. And now, of course, put that to an end, or hopefully we put that to an end. If price was to reverse very strongly and close back below, well, we're back at square one, and that would just be another fake out to me. So it's very important that we do stay above 3,500. Did I say 3,500? I meant to say 35. So yeah, as long as we stay above 35, then I'm very bullish. And in terms of the opportunity here, I do think we could probably see a similar move to the upside, a similar kind of height or price range, if you will, from the high to the low, which could take us back into 40, which is the next kind of big psychological level for silver. Probably look at 37.5 as well, I'd say, is something to keep an eye on. But in terms of the opportunity, in terms of the trend, everything is still very much up for silver. So now that we've cleared resistance out the way, it has left behind a very solid place for a buy. So basically just looking for a pullback, a retest of that range, and then some buying opportunities off the back of that. Nothing really too technical here with the price action, clear direction with the trend. So now just looking for a bit of a pause of the market, come back to some bullish areas, tap into that, hopefully see a nice rejection and a confirmation, and then just trail the trade and see how far we can go. This is the type of opportunity which I probably wouldn't have targets. I might secure some partials at a high or something. Let's say if we do pull back from here, I think if we do get there, naturally I will take some profits, but I will leave a decent chunk to run and just see how far we can get going. But I really like this opportunity for silver. Hopefully we can get a nice pullback and some buys next week. And like I said, I don't want to see price break back below. If we do that, then we might actually be talking about a big sell here. So let's stay above 35 and hopefully get some nice entries for some longs. And that, guys, does bring us to the end of the analysis. If you have found it useful, please be sure to smash the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and of course hit the bell so you don't miss out on any streams or uploads in the future. Drop a comment down below, pairs you're looking to trade for next week. I'm interested. I've gone through some pairs which I'm interested in trading. I'll talk a lot more about my watch list probably on the streams as the week progresses. But some interesting moves next week. Hopefully we can get some nice trading opportunities. See how Aussie CHF goes for myself. But guys, really do appreciate you tuning in. Have a great weekend, and I'll catch you all in the new week.